Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, in this piece of content, I want to talk about an article that I saw the other day. It was all about cyber attacks and the impact on businesses. And I don't think that we always talk about some of these implications that happen as a result of these cyber attacks. So, I just want to take a few minutes to talk about it, give you some additional resources that will help you as far as your incident response processes and plans and policies and everything like that. So let's go ahead and talk about that. As always, just make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy the content and all the YouTube stuff. Also, check out the description because there's more resources that are related to this content and other things that are relevant to you as well. So make sure to check out that as well. So if we go ahead and we flip on over to my screen here. So cost of a data breach 2024. So this is a report that was done by IBM. And I want to bring this up because this has some important numbers in here. So if we look at this, one of the most important numbers that's in this specific study, and this is not the exact article, we'll get to that here in a second, but this article or this research study says that on average, the global cost of a data breach in 2024, which was a 10% increase over the previous year, is $4.88 million. So $4,880,000 for a single data breach on average. That's a pretty substantial penalty or cost to suffer a data breach. That's something you have to think about in your organization, and we'll get to more of this here soon. But what if your company's not even worth $5 million? You just went bankrupt with one incident. So I want you to keep that in mind in any company that you work at, what the overall landscape of your company is, the size of your company, how much revenue your company brings in, because these incidents can be very catastrophic for your organization and for the business. They can bankrupt a business, absolutely, if they're catastrophic enough. We also see some other important numbers here. 1 in 3 share of data breaches that involve shadow data, showing the proliferation of data is making it harder to track and safeguard. Then $2.22 million is the average cost savings in millions for organizations that use security AI and automation extensively in prevention versus those that didn't. So, of course, promoting the idea of automation and trying to not manually do a lot of this stuff, the more incidents you get, all those things, it can be really important to be leveraging those technologies. But I just want to show you that really important stat, especially that first number, that $4.88 million. So keep that in mind as we start going through this article. So if we go to the actual article here, it's called How Cyber Attacks Affect Your Staff. So we'll keep scrolling down here. It says, as we continue to move into 2025, organizations are facing more threats to business continuity than ever before. We know that. Organizations are facing so many different cyber threats, especially, that understanding your threat landscape, the risks that you face, and what to do if you have a data incident or an incident response scenario that you have to execute. You just have to be aware of all this stuff and trying to keep your company from really suffering the catastrophic events that could happen. It says at Data Barracks, we surveyed 500 businesses in our 2024 data health check and found that more than 50% of them were affected by cyber threats in the previous year. So this is a current year article. This is 2025. But what's even more alarming is that 37% of those incidents led directly to job losses. So think about that. In your organization, it doesn't have to be the entire organization, but what if you have a $5 million loss? How many jobs would that take away from your organization? How many people or a headcount would you have to give up because you can't pay those people because you've had to put funds towards something else? This is a substantial thing. Maybe an area of your business, a specific product, specific service, maybe that gets breached, that gets hacked, and that just has to go away because customers don't trust you anymore. You start losing a ton of business. These are all possible implications that can definitely happen from an incident. Don't kid yourself. This is a very serious thing, especially when we're talking about sensitive data. Besides the technical disruptions and financial consequences of a cyber incident, we're seeing a significant human cost. Again, this goes back to losing jobs, right? We're having to cut people. How many people are you going to have to cut if an incident happens? How do you protect them? What can you do to prevent that maximum impact? Let's see here. Regrettably, staff dismissals now seem an inevitable consequence of a cyber attack. Again, that's why it's so serious. The fact that cyber incidents require a bunch of upfront work in order to prevent them and minimize the overall impact that they can have is so important, because ultimately you could really prevent people from losing their jobs, or make sure that people keep their jobs. If you don't do the things you're supposed to do, people could lose their jobs because they just don't have the capability to keep running those specific services or products or whatever it is, right? There's some reason why you had to cut people. Then they talk about 730 people at a UK firm called KNP Logistics. Let's see here. An outsourcing specialist, Capita. Meanwhile, a ransomware attack in 2023 led to 900 job cuts in 2024, pay freezes for thousands of its remaining employees. So this can be very, very wide scale. Again, it depends on how severe that is. But this is why it is so important that you do things like making sure you have an incident response process, policy, plan, making sure you actually test it. There's a whole real focus these days, especially this year, last year, kind of these last couple of years, about this shift towards cyber resiliency. We've seen different acts and standards and requirements, regulations that are coming out all around cyber resiliency. This term is a little bit newer, but the whole idea of trying to not only withstand attacks or scenarios, incidents, but being able to recover. That's the whole kind of focus of cyber resiliency, is how much can you withstand and still continue your business operations. So a lot of times you might have heard this referred to as business continuity. This is kind of a newer term that's kind of evolving that really takes it kind of a step further. So they talk about incident response exercises. Of course, this is something I just talked about. You have to do that. You cannot just implement a policy and not involve the people that are involved in that plan or policy for when things are actually going to take place. You have to practice. Just like if you're playing a sport, you have to create a plan, you create your strategy, create your policy, create the procedures that you might do, and then you actually have to execute that. You have to practice it ahead of time, because once things start going crazy, you start suffering an incident, I'm telling you, that is going to be the worst time ever for you to first be trying out your incident response plan. That is a really, really bad strategy that some companies will do. And then if they face a cyber incident or an attack, they are really going to learn why that's a bad idea. And it's unfortunate because, again, other people are going to suffer if you are not really doing your due diligence and due care. Those are CISSP terms if you haven't studied for that certification yet. If you have, you probably are familiar with those. But the idea of you're going to implement a plan, you're going to implement a process, a program, and you're also going to test it and update it and evolve it over time. It's kind of how those two things fit together. So again, everybody that's involved should be a part of the process, should be a part of your plan, your testing of your incident response process, whether that's a tabletop, so a walkthrough, if you're actually executing that, you're doing the individual steps, all those kinds of different test options that you have. Now, it also says effective communication is another pillar of business continuity, which is absolutely true. Think about when attacks happen or incidents happen. Who do you go to? Who do you have to contact? If you've looked at any of the standards that are around incident response, you'll see that's a major part of it, is having a communication channel, having a communication tree, so having different contacts listed out, having their numbers, their emails, how to get a hold of them after hours. These are all things that go into this, but then it's also not just the the communication within the team, within your organization. How are you communicating that to employees? What are you telling employees as far as the incident? What are you telling your customers? These are all considerations that you have to think about, and they all go towards that ultimate strategy of incident response in your organization. Let's see, the cyber threat continues to grow, but there's a silver lining at least. More and more businesses, 9 out of those 10 that they surveyed, in fact, are confident in their ability to respond to a crisis. So the only way you're going to be confident in your response is if you're testing your response and you're making sure that everybody is familiar with what needs to happen, who needs to be contacted, when they need to be contacted, what needs to be documented, what needs to be reported. These are all steps that have to happen in the incident response process. And I'd be curious to understand the 9 out of 10 if there is maybe a little bit of overconfidence in there. That definitely happens with different cybersecurity departments or teams, organizations even. This kind of overconfidence as far as your ability to do certain things, to actually execute your plan accordingly. But I can tell you one thing. If you're more confident because you're actually testing it and you're practicing, that's great. It's when you're not testing it, you're not practicing it, you're just saying you're doing it, where that starts to become an issue, and that overconfidence is not going to help you. That's actually going to hurt you because you probably haven't even tested the right things or even thought of the right things. So it's really important that you do this. Now, having said that, having talked about incident response, there's 2 other things I want to show you here. And so with this, we have the NIST special publication 800-34, Rev 1. So I went ahead and pulled this up. This is the NIST publication for contingency planning. So this is a really good one if you want to learn more about incident response and those kind of things. I'm not going to go deep into this actual standard or special publication, but let's go to the table of contents here just so you can see real quick what's in here. And of course, if you want to read more into it, certainly do that. If you deal with NIST or the US government, those kind of things, you'll definitely want to look at this one. But it talks about contingency planning and resilience, different types of plans. If you've studied anything in cybersecurity, you probably heard about these: business continuity plan, continuity of operations, crisis communication plan, right? We just talked about that. Critical infrastructure, cyber incident response plan, disaster recovery plan, contingency plan, occupant emergency plan. So a whole bunch of different types of plans. Again, all this stuff is really based on your risk management strategy and your prioritization of those critical business processes, your business impact analysis. All this stuff is connected. Understanding what needs to be backed up, how you need to restore backups if you need to, how you need to recover systems, what needs to be recovered in what order, if you need to use alternate sites. This document is a really good one to look at if you haven't seen it or you haven't seen something like this, because if you work in cybersecurity at all, you're probably going to be somehow involved in incident response, in business continuity, in cyber resiliency. So understanding this is really good. If you're going to work in something like GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, you're definitely going to have to know about this. So this is a really good one to look at. Again, this is going to mainly deal with things like the US government or defense contractors. It's a NIST standard, a NIST special publication, so that's kind of where they focus. The other one that we can switch to here is ISO 27031, which, if you're familiar with ISO at all, it's an international standards body. And so they make standards on just about anything that you can think of. But this would be basically for everybody else. So this is information technology, security techniques, guidelines for information and communication technology readiness for business continuity. Again, it's the same kind of idea. It's just not from NIST. It's from ISO instead. So it's a little bit different focus as far as the different types of systems and everything like that. 177 francs if you want to buy it. That's the downside of using ISO, is that you do have to buy the standards. So it's about $200 US if you're in the United States. But you can also see on the left here the different elements or items that are in the actual document. Again, we're not going to go through this. They're very similar as far as the things that they're going to want you to implement. They're not going to be the exact same, but they are going to have the different kinds of plans. They're going to have incident response, and they're generally going to follow the same kind of things. So one of the things in GRC especially is thinking if you know one standard, you don't know another standard, you have to kind of like relearn everything. But that's something to keep in mind as well, is that since these standards are very similar, you will generally be able to understand the different standards kind of right off the bat. You got to get familiar with the different terminology and the different structure. Sometimes there's little odd things or just differences in the standards. So you have to understand that. But again, NIST is very heavy in the United States government, and then ISO would be basically everything else. It could be in the United States as well. Maybe you don't deal with government. Maybe you deal with international partners, or you're in multiple countries, you have international presence, then you would want ISO, just because everybody internationally is going to be familiar with ISO. So that's really the biggest thing that I want to talk about, is just incidents, kind of their overall impact, give you a few resources that you can use in order to learn more about incident response, business continuity, resiliency. Remember, these are all terms that you're going to want to be at least able to articulate some of the information about it. But just from a professional standpoint, from a cybersecurity standpoint, in your organization, you need to understand this stuff. It is very, very real. It's very necessary. And if you aren't going to do it, then I guess why even do cybersecurity at all, right? But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for this episode. And again, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff for the YouTube algorithm. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next one. See you later.
Are you tired of overpaying for cybersecurity training? Are you interested in training from industry professionals? Are you looking for cybersecurity career services? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then cybertrainingpro.com is the perfect platform for you. At Cybertraining Pro, we're a one-stop shop for all your cybersecurity needs. We can train you for industry certifications or just improve your overall knowledge and skills in a certain area. Unlike other platforms, we don't stop there. We can also coach you throughout your career, practice your interview skills, or create a high-performing resume with our career services. Cybertrainingpro.com isn't just another training platform. Students get exclusive access to our private community, where we go beyond training courses to provide additional content, tips and tricks, and engagement with both other students and staff. Look, by the year 2025, there could be as many as 3.5 million job openings in cybersecurity. With so much opportunity, why not maximize your career potential with a platform that cares about your success? Come join us at cybertrainingpro.com and start building your future today.